Total Screen proudly presents their official podcast, On Screen, with your hosts, Tyson Gifford and William Rohrig.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to On Screen, the official podcast of the Total Screen. My name is Tyson.
My name is Will.
And tonight we are going to be talking about Novocaine. We talked about Companion last week, and we decided to stick on the Jack Quaid train, ride it right into Novocaine. So that's going to be our main topic and full spoilers. Before that, though, we've got our On the Horizon segment. We've got an On Beat segment with some news stories and some trailers to go over. Let's kick things off with On the Horizon.
On the Horizon.
On the Horizon, as I said, is our segment where we talk about what's coming up in the next week or so. And we're going to start things off with Friendship, which I missed last week. But that's coming on Friday, May 23rd to theaters. Oops. I missed that in our show notes last week.
Oh, okay. That's fine.
So this podcast probably won't be up before this movie comes out, but I just wanted to put that in there because I forgot about it. And we did talk about the trailer and stuff, so seems out of place for us not to mention that. Then on Sunday, May 25th, Rick and Morty returns on Adult Swim Cartoon Network. Adults, which is being described by Nick Kroll, who's a producer on it, as an edgier take on Friends, is coming on Wednesday, May 28th to FX and Hulu. Hulu on the next day. Department Q, which is a kind of a cop show set in Edinburgh, Scotland, from the creator of The Queen's Gambit, is coming on Thursday, May 29th to Netflix. Bob's Burgers is returning on Thursday, May 29th on Fox, as is Family Guy, also May 29th on Fox. Elden Ring Nightreign is coming out on Friday, May 30th to PC, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X. I imagine that's eventually going to come to Switch 2 since Elden Ring is going to be coming to Switch 2 as well, but they just haven't announced that yet. I know you're a big Elden Ring fan. Do you have any interest in Nightreign? Because it's kind of a divisive topic for the FromSoft fans.
Not really. Not too interested in a multiplayer. Because I'm looking at it, it's like a multiplayer roguelike.
Is it basically similar to what, because I know people were comparing it to the Duskbloods that was revealed in the Switch 2 thing as like a PvPvE. Is that what Elden Ring Nightreign is as well?
No, it's a PvE. It's like a co-op PvE. So,
okay.
As far as I understand, there's no PvP in Nightreign.
Okay, so it's purely cooperative multiplayer.
Yes. The gameplay loop seems like you're running sessions, the maps are like randomly generated, and the enemies are like randomly generated, so like there's a roguelike element to it, and each session lasts maybe like 5 to 10 minutes, and you just keep doing that till you get to a boss. So it's not like an RPG where you're building your stats and you're adventuring. So I'm not like really super into that.
So it's like roguelite.
Yeah.
Kind of like one of my favorite games, Balatro, is also a roguelite.
Yeah.
Very different type of game. But
very different type of game, yeah.
They're both qualified as roguelites, so. But that's coming on Friday, May 30th. Then you have Karate Kid Legends, also coming on Friday, May 30th to theaters. I'm excited about that. It's interesting. I'm only seeing 2 movies in theaters this month, I think. I might see another,
really?
But it's right now, it's looking like I saw Thunderbolts on May 1st.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to see Karate Kid Legends on May 30th. So I'm basically bookending the month with movies.
Well, there you go.
But yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic for Karate Kid Legends. I think it just doesn't look on the same level as Cobra Kai. It looks it doesn't. Interesting.
It doesn't look like, it's definitely like its own thing, which is fine. It looks solid, like on the surface.
Yeah, it sucks is now I gotta watch the Jaden Smith Karate Kid movie.
I don't think you do.
I feel like I have to.
To like understand the character of Mr. Han.
Yes.
Yeah.
The deep lore.
The deep lore, yeah, exactly.
Also coming to theaters on Friday, May 30th, we also have Bring Her Back from the directors of Talk to Me, and Tim Travers and the Time Traveler's Paradox, which we talked about the trailer for, I think, 2 weeks ago.
Oh, yeah.
But those are both coming on Friday, May 30th as well. That is it for our On the Horizon segment, and now we're moving on to On Beat. On Beat is our new segment, and we're going to be starting off with a correction. So last week, when we hit the This Week in Zaslav part of the news segment, we were talking about HBO Max coming back, how it was HBO Max, and it was Max, and now it's HBO Max again. And in that description, I forgot that there was a service called HBO Now. I thought that was called HBO Max, and then I remembered, no, that actually, there was a separate one called HBO Now that HBO Max kind of took over. Like they didn't just rebrand it though, like they changed everything. And that's kind of when that happened, because the HBO Max thing all happened at the merger, and it became HBO Max, then it became Max, and now it's becoming HBO Max again. But before that, before Zaslav was involved, it was called HBO Now, that service. So I'm making that correction.
HBO Now was like the original name for the service.
Yeah. It was, and the two that were parallel were HBO Go and HBO Now.
And I think like HBO Max originally was to kind of highlight that it was HBO and Cinemax, on the streaming.
It came with the merger, so it seems like the name seems like it would imply that, but what it really was HBO and a bunch of Discovery shit.
HBO Max didn't come with the merger.
I thought HBO Max came with the merger.
No, that name was pre-merger.
Okay.
So David Zaslav inherited the service with that name, and then that's when he and his executives and their infinite wisdom was like, oh, we got this new streaming service, we gotta like mess with the name now, and that's when they came up with Max.
Because, you gotta use Max because that makes people think of Cinemax, which makes people think of Skinemax, which makes people think of like hitting their TV to try to clarify the boobies.
Yes, exactly.
Through the scramble.
That's gonna get tons of subs.
Yeah. But now it's HBO Max again. Hopefully it'll just eventually settle back into HBO, or I never understood why they went with Max and why they didn't just like call it like Warner.
Yeah, I don't know. It's so weird. Yeah, they just cut the HBO out and left it as Max. And the reasoning at the time when they were making that name change was because, we're also putting up all this Discovery content. It's not just about HBO anymore. So we gotta rebrand it. And it's like, okay, but you didn't like even...
But all of that is under Warner. So just call it Warner.
Yeah, exactly. It was so dumb.
Yeah. We're rehashing our shit talking on all the stupid ass name changes for HBO from last week. But yeah, just had to make that correction. We forgot about HBO Now. Our next news story, Zach Braff is set to reprise his role from Scrubs in a reboot/continuation series that's in development.
Which is interesting. Didn't know that was a thing until now. I like Scrubs. I think the last season of Scrubs, when they tried to do it like as a sequel series,
without the main cast,
without the main cast, with the new cast, was pretty awful. Nobody liked it.
That's a lesson that I think people don't learn, because it happened, like Michael Scott left The Office.
Yes.
And they said, well, let's just keep it going. And it's like, okay.
Yeah, let's keep it going post Steve Carell. And I mean, like, The Office still had its moments post Steve Carell. I'm not gonna say it didn't, but like, it definitely felt like something was missing the whole time watching the post Carell like seasons. And I think
like wiped the entire initial cast, didn't it?
Yes. Yeah, because it was supposed to be like a new series at that
point. They called it Scrubs TNG. The Next Generation.
Yeah, they're trying to do like Scrubs The Next Generation.
And the rookie, the leader of the rookie doctors at the doctor's office should have been played by Patrick Stewart.
Yes.
Literally playing the card, but as a doctor. As a young doctor. That would have been funny.
That would have been funny. Apparently, like, Bill Lawrence didn't even want, like, a Scrubs season 9. He intended for season 8 to be the end of the series, but ABC renewed it for a 9th season, and Lawrence even asked ABC to rename the show to something like Scrubs Med, but ABC insisted it was Scrubs season 9.
It's just dumb.
Yeah, it's just dumb, yeah.
Our next news story is, it's a report, which is code for rumor, but this is from Deadline, so that means you can pretty much take it to the bank as being true. The report is that The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, is set to play a problematic guru in A24's new movie Breakthrough. It's about a young guy who gets caught up in the machinations of a guru who might be sinister and have sinister intentions, and it's about like that. So yeah, that's interesting. We talked before we started recording about The Rock's like career shift as an actor, trying to take on more serious roles, and that's kind of starting with another A24 movie, which is The Smashing Machine, I believe is what it's called.
Yeah. So the Rock now, he's trying to reinvent himself, reinvent his career by starring in these prestige dramas. After spending a career being like this larger than life character, he wants to be taken more seriously as an actor.
Yeah, he got the big paychecks.
Yeah.
And now he wants the respect.
Now he wants the respect. Yeah, exactly. And I think
he wants a skinny gold bald man on his mantle.
And for sounds like he's choosing some interesting roles. He's choosing some interesting parts that like kind of fit who he is, but they also like subvert his public persona, right? Mm-hmm. They're like subversions of like the public persona that he's been playing his entire life.
Yeah.
You know, like the Smashing Machine, he's playing an MMA fighter, you know, who's problematic. And in this movie, in this rumored film, he's like, it looks like he's playing a sort of like an Andrew Tate type character. This person who is supposed to be projecting this machismo, this alpha male energy and trying to impart this on this naive person that he's taken under his wing, but he's really just this toxic, dangerous person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an interesting change in career trajectory, and it's interesting that he's like already making moves to follow up what he's doing in The Smashing Machine before that's really out and getting reviews. So he's just kind of like sticking to it, and it's also interesting because it's A24 again. So he's really trying to whitewash his career through the power of indie powerhouse.
Right, yeah.
Our next news story is that Jason Momoa, Andrew Koji, who's from the movie Bullet Train, Noah Centineo from Warfare, the recent A24 movie, and WWE's Roman Reigns, so this story already almost feels like a sequel to the last one, are in talks to star in a Street Fighter movie from Legendary Pictures. And yes, I mean that Street Fighter, Capcom Street Fighter.
And my thing is, okay, I don't know what to say. Cool, I like Jason Momoa, I guess. Roman Reigns, alright, whatever. They've never made a good Street Fighter movie. So like, I'm not super hyped for this. And like this casting announcement doesn't like get me any more pumped than I was before. It's just like, okay.
Well, they're not even cast, they're in talks. So they're in
that's
negotiations for it. But, you know, when it's being reported like this, it means they're probably pretty far in negotiations. They're just ironing out sticking points.
Right. It's definitely like, I have to see it to believe it. I have to see the movie and see like that it's actually like good to believe it. Until I see a trailer, I don't have any opinion about this whatsoever.
As I was saying to you, like I stumbled across another way this movie could work, but as I was saying to you, the only way I could really think of this movie working before I stumbled upon another way would be if it was like animated or something, you know?
Yeah.
And then you could kind of go ridiculous with it
well,
and over the top and still do it. They've done a lot of it. They did an animated movie and several
Street Fighter animated movie is a classic in my opinion. That was fantastic.
All of those I think also kind of took it too seriously. Like I think if they did it right, they'd have to be more like a fun anime. But if they're doing it live action and with like a cast like this or something, I think the only other way you could make this work is if you just went full tongue in cheek. You just went like, okay, yeah, we know this is shit and we're like winking along with you and we're just going to take it. We're going to do it as if we're dead serious about it, but it's going to be hilarious.
Oh, lol.
That's like the only other way I can imagine this working. Cause like, how can you make a serious plot out of Street Fighter? You know, it's so ridiculous. You'd either have to completely neuter it, basically remake Bloodsport, the old Van Damme movie about the Kumite, or you'd have to be faithful and just make a really bad movie.
Breaking, we got an update about this news story. We got some rumors. The big leakers, Daniel, RPK, and, Jeff Snyder. Apparently, we have some idea of who these people are playing. Apparently, Koji is going to be playing Ryu, and Centineo is going to be playing Ken, and Roman Reigns is playing Akuma.
Okay.
No word on who Jason Momoa is, still.
Gosling.
Yeah, that's him. Yeah, exactly.
He's playing
Oh, man.
Sakura.
Roman Reigns as Akuma certainly is a choice.
I just said it. Jason Momoa has to play Sakura.
Yes, but yeah, he's Sakura. I saw a meme image of Jason Momoa dressed as Cammy.
Yeah, there you go. I'd accept Jason Momoa as Cammy or Sakura.
Cammy
Maybe
or Sakura.
Chun-Li.
Yeah,
but
maybe
only if
Chun-Li.
they use the traditional outfit.
Yes.
The hair buns and all. Yeah, if they do it right, if they do it tongue-in-cheek, they could make it good. But even if they went tongue-in-cheek, it's like a 50-50 chance it's going to be garbage. Even if they went in tongue-in-cheek, there's still a good chance it's just going to be the fighting game adaptation version of, like, epic movie.
Right. Yeah. I just don't know. I don't have any real faith in this.
So our last news story before we get to the trailers is there was a developer interview for Mario Kart World, and some details came out about its development. Most notably, the most notable thing is that it's basically been in development for about 8 years, they said. That it went straight into development around the time they finished work on Mario Kart 8 Deluxe.
Yeah.
Which came out in the first year of the original Switch.
Which makes sense, because Mario Kart 8 came out in 2015, and then they did the Deluxe update for Switch, which was basically just like a porting job, but they added like some extra, like Deluxe added a couple.
And that came out,
things.
Was it June or July? I know like one of those was Splatoon and one was Mario Kart. I think it was June.
No.
I think
Mario
Splatoon
Kart
came out after.
Mario Kart came out in April. I know that for a fact.
On the Switch?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it was
I thought it was June
the
and
month
July,
after launch. No, because April was Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, May was ARMS, June there was no first party release on Switch for June. None. So, and then July was Splatoon 2.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it released April 28th.
Yeah,
for some reason I was thinking that
they're walking right into Target and buying it.
I thought Mario Kart 8 and Splatoon 2 launched like a month apart from each other or something.
Nope, that was like
Splatoon
ARMS
2 was either
2.
June or July then, right?
Splatoon 2 was July. ARMS was May. There was nothing in June.
All right. So, so it's been in development for, more than 8 years then.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me because, like, I kind of figured once 8 Deluxe was out the door and they're done updating Mario Kart 8 that they would go right into development on the next Mario Kart game. Presumably for the Switch, which was always my presumption. And I kept waiting, and it never came. And I was kind of like, okay, by the time they announced the Booster Course Pass, when they announced the Booster Course Pass, then I knew something was up. Because I was like, okay, suddenly there's all this new content for Mario Kart 8, and there's no Mario Kart 9.
Apparently, that wasn't the deciding point. That was more like the moment where they decided because of that. Like, it's kind of the opposite direction, where when the Booster Pass thing came into being, they said, oh, okay, let's just delay this to Switch 2.
Right.
So that was kind of the moment that they shifted development or something.
Yeah, they shifted development. Also,
not when the Booster Pass came out, but like I'm imagining when it went into development.
Right, when it went into development. Yeah, exactly. Because then they had to shift development resources into suddenly making all this new content for Mario Kart 8. They had to shift back to that. Which originally, when 8 Deluxe came out, they said they weren't doing any more content for Mario Kart 8. That 8 Deluxe was it, you know.
And then 8 Deluxe sold, like, insane numbers. Way better than they expected.
Yeah, way better than they could have imagined.
What's interesting is that, like you said, this was supposed to be developed for the Switch 1, Mario Kart World.
8 Deluxe was supposed to be filler to, like, pad out, you know, the early launch lineup.
And World was supposed to be for Switch 1.
Yes.
And when they went in development, it was very crucial. Like, one of the earliest choices, was that it was going to be 24 players.
Yes.
And that it was going to have these, like, big open kind of world thing with these big open tracks. And that's why they wanted 24 players, is because they were making these much larger tracks and they needed more players to make it work, to get that kind of frantic energy that they have in, 8 Deluxe and stuff. And they needed to translate that up by adding more players. And that's kind of what initially caused problems for Switch 1 development, where they had to, like, I guess, lock it at 30 FPS because they just had too many players, too much stuff going on.
Yeah, they said, like, trying to get this to work on Switch 1 meant too many compromises. They had to make, like, a bunch of compromises that they weren't fully comfortable with.
Like some of the expressive animations, apparently, they couldn't do.
Yeah, they couldn't do. Yeah, exactly. It's interesting they touched on why they decided to name this Mario Kart World instead of Mario Kart 9, and they said it's because of the open world structure. and the interconnectedness of the courses. They said if they just made this a new Mario Kart with a new set of courses, it would have been called Mario Kart 9.
Yeah, and they also said something along the lines of that they didn't want to do a direct follow-up, like a Mario Kart 8 to Mario Kart 9, because 8 just was like the refined, like, end point of that style of Mario Kart. Like, they just didn't know where they could go. Like, it would just be more tracks, more items. That's all it would really be.
Yeah, exactly. It would just been new tracks and new items and new racers. That's all you could really do with that formula, you know?
Yeah, and so they said instead of like remaking Mario Kart 8 again, but with like new stuff, like let's take this in a slightly different direction.
Yeah, exactly. And then we got some more information about how the game starts. It's got a day-night cycle of 24 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
They add rail grinding and wall riding to make the driving between tracks less boring.
I heard the timing, I heard dynamic. The day-night cycle is also not set as like 24 minutes because they said like certain parts of the track they want to emphasize certain times of day or something.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So they've made it like last longer in certain periods and stuff. They kind of try to influence that, I guess.
Yeah.
They want you to see certain parts of the track at night and they want you to see certain parts of the track at day. So they kind of like focused it so that like there'd be a greater chance of seeing those or something, which is interesting. It shows like a lot of thought going into the way the levels come into being as you play, you know, for an open world game. They're getting timey-wimey with it.
Yeah,
they're getting Doctor Who cart.
This Doctor Who cart. Yeah, exactly. It's an interesting piece of like development history information about that. I just thought that was interesting.
They also said something about over 100 courses, but that was in reference to the variations of courses.
Yeah, exactly.
So apparently the courses are going to be drastically changing, and they referenced that it would be something that would be considered separate courses in a previous game, considering that the Animal Crossing track is considered a single track and basically has 4 entirely different seasons, and they play differently based on the seasons. That means it should be even more so than that. Like the changes should be even more dramatic than that between, you know, courses, I guess, based on certain weather conditions and stuff like that.
Oh, absolutely.
So it just sounds like an absolutely huge game. I'm looking forward to it. I just saw a video recently where they were showing the way the binocular system worked when you go into like the open world area and you can go up to a binocular and you can like zoom around and look and you could see stuff like moving like way in the distance. So I'm encouraged by that. That means that the world kind of feels a bit more alive. Like there's actual elements moving around way, way off in the distance that are like it's keeping track of during gameplay. But it's interesting in general because I always thought when I saw Mario Kart World, it looks like a Switch 1 game. Like it doesn't look too terribly much more impressive than a Switch 1 game, but that's because it's doing much more complicated stuff.
Yeah, it's doing a lot more than Mario Kart is doing.
Yeah, like exactly. instead of graphical fidelity, they focused on doubling the number of players on the track, making the world like huge and seamless, and like I all those kind of things, you know.
And I do think like graphics wise, it does look like a step up. Yeah,
but it doesn't look a generation.
It's got more animations in it, more expressiveness. But yeah, it doesn't look like a massive graphical leap, but again, it's doing so much more. And that's also like what people have to like take into consideration is how complex is this game, because it's not all about graphical fidelity.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. There's a few games like that. When I was thinking about that aspect of Mario Kart World, I was also thinking about Donkey Kong Bonanza. I think Bonanza also looks like it could be a Switch 1 game if you just like took the assets. Because the gameplay is what makes it complicated. It's all that destructible environments and stuff that makes it complex. But if you just took the assets and made like a very straightforward platformer with them,
you could definitely scale those assets down to work on Switch for sure.
Pretty easily, I think.
Pretty easily.
It doesn't look that impressive, but it's all the stuff that you're doing that's like crazy and more complex that would like just bring the Switch 1 to like a grinding halt.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Like just like smashing, like all that stuff, like all the particle effects on screen at once are probably slow the Switch down to a crawl.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and I was thinking about that, and I was also thinking about there were Switch 1 games that came out in very compromised conditions that people were like, they should have just waited for this for like Switch 2 or something.
Yeah, like the impossible ports,
Yeah, well, not even that. I was thinking like Bayonetta 3 is a perfect example.
Oh, yeah.
Has major frame rate issues, there's clipping issues, there's all sorts of problems, and it's because the game is so much more ambitious than Bayonetta 2 that it just like ran headfirst into a wall. And I want to see a Switch 2 edition of Bayonetta 3. I think that game needs it about as much as any game does. But man, it's just, I wanted to bring up that aspect of it, just like how Nintendo is kind of putting their focus less on like graphical fidelity for this next generation, at least so far from like the first party stuff we've seen. And it's putting it more on complexity.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Nintendo said in a previous S developer for Switch, one of the reasons for Switch 2 is because Nintendo's developers want to start doing more complex things in their games. And Switch was kind of just the hardware was not up to the task.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's interesting. I'm wondering what the next Zelda is going to look like, and what the next,
Same. Zelda is great because it's always so hard to predict. I think Anuma said they're not doing the next Zelda in the Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom world.
Mm-hmm.
They've gotten what they want to do out of that, so it's gonna be a totally new thing.
There just isn't much to do else.
Yeah, so it's gonna be a totally new thing. And Zelda is always the one that's hard to predict because it always comes out not the way you expect it, right? Because
they fuck around with art styles.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. They showed the tech demo for the GameCube, and Wind Waker was not that. It's the exact opposite.
And they had a tech demo for the Wii U, also. Looked nothing like Breath of the Wild ended up being.
Yeah, exactly. So we don't know what the next Zelda is even going to look like.
Yeah. It just makes me really curious, because Zelda has been going down a road of, making really complex systems. The chemistry system in Breath of the Wild is ridiculously complicated.
Yeah.
And,
they've gone more in direction of,
and stuff, yeah.
They've gone more and more in direction of, being sandbox games.
Yeah, so I'm curious, are they going to head even further in that direction? Are we basically going to be seeing something graphically that's not too far off from what we got from Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, but just another level deeper in complexity?
Right. Yeah.
I'm curious, but yeah, it's interesting seeing that happening now with Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bonanza though. But I want to see the new 3D Mario too. Is that going to be, are they going to do something crazy and wacky like they did with Bonanza? Or are they going to do something more straightforward and really good looking, Maybe they're going to step back and do something more level based like Galaxy versus big open world like Odyssey.
Mario's interesting because they're always trying to do something new with Mario.
Yeah.
They're always pushing new ideas with every new Mario entry. So it's going to be really interesting to see what they do with the next 3D Mario.
But that is it for our regular news stories. And now we're going to move on to the trailers. And we're going to start things off with Americana, which is about a Native American shirt.
That's the star.
Yes.
Yeah, it's about this priceless Native American artifact. And these desperate people trying to steal it because it's worth a lot of money. And they're trying to, and it's these desperate people trying to get a payday and basically fighting each other over it.
Mm-hmm.
It was stolen by presumably a billionaire who had it. And then once it got stolen, it became fair game for all these people coming out of the woodwork. It's full of all these zany characters.
Yeah, it's got a fantastic, interesting cast.
Yeah.
When we were talking about this before the podcast, the one that came to mind that we were talking about was Zane McLaren, who is kind of the Native American actor that you see pop up in everything when they need a Native American actor.
Yeah,
he's fantastic, and he's versatile, and he's really good, and he's Native American, so number one on the call sheet for that specific casting motif, I guess. He's in it. You got Sydney Sweeney, who's on a career hot streak. Paul Walter Hauser, Stingray from Cobra Kai.
Paul Walter Hauser, he's also having his moment. He's got
he's got a crazy career, yeah.
Yeah, he's got a crazy career. He's got some other things lined up.
He's got weird comedies and stuff, but then he's got Oscar things, Oscar contenders and stuff. He's just all over the place.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because he was Stingray in Cobra Kai, and he was a joke character in that, but like he's having like a much better career than anybody from that show.
Yeah,
so.
he was in a Clint Eastwood directed movie, you know? Like,
You're right. Yeah, exactly.
it's kind of crazy. And then you have Halsey's in this for some reason. It's just like a crazy, weird, eclectic cast of actors playing crazy, eclectic characters. And it just has a very like Coen Brothers vibe.
It has like it's like very Coen Brothers vibes. It's this mashup of a Western, a crime noir, and like a comedy all balled into one.
Yeah, it looks pretty fun.
It does.
I love the kid that thinks he's a reincarnation of Sitting Bull.
Yeah, I like the trailer, like his conversation with Zach McLaren's character.
Yeah, it was on where Zon's like, isn't this a little late for cultural appropriation?
Yeah.
Going from one comedy to another, but a different type of comedy. This is a full-on satire. We have Mountainhead. Now, you and I have talked about this before, and we got the teaser trailer for it. We just decided not to cover it on the show. There wasn't that much to talk about, but now they've released a longer trailer. Gives you kind of a better idea of what's going on.
That's typically the case when the teasers come out. The teasers usually don't give like enough to go on.
Unless it's like something we already are deeply invested in, like an MCU thing or something.
Yeah, but like when it's a known quantity, when you know what you're going to get, right? Yeah, exactly.
But when it's something like this and we don't really know, we know like, oh, it's from the guy who did Succession. Oh, there seemed to be a bunch of rich
Jason
people.
Schwartzman and Steve Carell. It's got a great cast.
But it's like, okay, it's just a bunch of rich assholes. Like, what's going on? And
so basically, for the trailer, we know what's going on for the trailer is that these four tech bros, tech executives, very wealthy men, billionaires have holed themselves up in a mountain retreat for some fun times. And while they're doing that, the world is going to hell, basically thanks to like one of their app.
Yeah, and it's basically them like confronting the fact that they caused this, but it's done as like a satire.
Yeah, they basically caused a financial crisis that is precipitating a downfall of humanity.
Yeah, and they're like enjoying a ski trip.
And they're enjoying a ski trip, and they're grappling with this, but they're assholes, so like there's no sense of remorse or anything or horror. They're saying they're planning out what parts of the world they're going to own after society collapses.
Yeah. Satire, it's a movie. It's a made-for-streaming movie that's coming to Max, and it looks interesting. I famously am not a fan of Succession. I think the reason why is because I just can't tolerate characters that I despise unless there's something else that draws me in. And a good example of that would be something like Game of Thrones or House of Dragons. It's like, yeah, most of the characters I despise, but also there's fucking dragons, and there's like people getting their heads mashed in. And there's crazy shit happening that makes it like more entertaining as well, you know?
And there are people in like, you know, Game of Thrones stuff that you can root for, you know?
Yeah, you got your Arya Starks and stuff, too. But Succession, from the one episode I saw, I'm like, I hate everybody in this. And everybody loves that show and thinks it's so great. And they say, well, the whole point is that you hate them all and stuff. And it's like, I just can't get into that. But something like this, which seems to have, their characters seem to be hateable in a very similar way, but it's a movie. So I can invest that, like, time of just the length of a movie, you know?
Watching these people for 2 hours, right?
Yeah. I can watch it. I can get the satire from it. I can get those aspects from it without, like, just sending myself into a deep depression over the course of years, you know? So that's good. Mountainhead. Next, we got a trailer for It, Welcome to Derry. So this is the kind of originally this show was just called Welcome to Derry. And then they added It to the title just to remind you what it was. But this is when Max was doing their whole thing where like, we're going to make really expensive TV shows that tie into the movies that we're releasing. And we've gotten stuff like we got The Penguin, which is tied into the Batman. There was a Dune series that came out that was tied into the Dune movies.
Yeah.
Now we're getting It, Welcome to Derry. So we're getting the It tie-in movie. What's interesting from this is that the It movie, like the recent 2 It movies, not the miniseries, they changed the time frame. They like modernized the time frame so that like when the characters are adults, it's like in the modern times, and when they're kids, it's like in the 80s. Right. Whereas in the book and in the miniseries, I think it was like in the 50s when they were kids.
Well, yeah.
And it was like the 80s when they were adults.
Well, the book was written in the 80s, right?
Yeah.
And I think the miniseries, I think that might have actually came out in the 90s.
Maybe like early 90s, something like that.
Early 90s, yeah. But it was like right around that time frame. So like it makes sense. Mm-hmm. You know, like when they made the reboot movie, they updated it, made it set in modern times, because the book is supposed to be, at least like when they're adults, that part is supposed to be set in modern times, right?
Yeah. And what's interesting here is that we're getting something that looks very similar to it, but it takes place within the same universe, so this isn't a retelling. Yet the kids in this are like in the 50s or 60s or something.
Yeah, this is taking place in the 60s. It says so at like the beginning of the trailer. Because, like, this is a prequel, so
it's canonically tied.
The kids
it's canonically tied to the two It movies. So this isn't like a remake with the same characters played by different people in a different time. This is other kids in the same town going through the same cycle of things that happen. And it's interesting, and it can work with it because in it, it's all about this monster comes back every like 30 years or so.
Yeah.
And so it's like, oh, it was around in the 50s and now the kids are grown up and it's the 80s and now it's come back. And so now you go back like further again and you can go back into another era in which this is happening. I don't know how much Pennywise is going to be in this. I believe he is supposed to be in it. I believe Bill Skarsgård is supposed to be in this.
Well, they show Pennywise at the very end of the trailer.
Yeah, like a quick tease of him.
Yeah.
But apparently Bill Skarsgård is reprising, and I don't know. Be interesting to see where they go with this and what they do, because it's like, these kids clearly don't take out Pennywise.
Well, no.
So, looks like they're heading for a bit of a darker end than what we got with the main story. So, it's going to be kind of interesting to see where they go with this and how they tie things in and what they end up doing with it.
Right, yeah, exactly.
And then the last trailer we got is for a movie called Caught Stealing. And this is the new movie from Darren Aronofsky. And it stars Matt Smith, who was one of the doctors in Doctor Who. And he was also in House of the Dragon. Or he is in House of the Dragon, I should say. And then we also got Austin Butler, Elvis, who is also in Dune, who's talk about people whose careers have blown up. Got him in this movie, and it's basically like 1980s punk rock crime, and it looks interesting. We talked about how Americana looked like a Coen Brothers movie. This kind of almost looks like a Guy Ritchie movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's Darren Aronofsky, who's got he's a much bigger name than Guy Ritchie, you know?
Right. It's interesting.
Yeah. It's interesting because Darren Aronofsky took this weird direction where the first movie he did was Pi, and it was like it was like this psychological mystery movie with like kind of horror elements and like very dramatic, surrealistic stuff going on. And then he did Requiem for a Dream, which he actually got sued by one of my favorite directors for because he kind of ripped him off like whole cloth. Ripped off Satoshi Kon, the late great Satoshi Kon. And he did that, and it was like, okay, so this is what Darren Aronofsky is. But then he started making this shift where he did like The Wrestler, and it was like, okay, this is just like a real straightforward, we're not doing anything crazy, it's very like just a grounded story. And that kind of seemed to be the direction he was moving in. And the last movie he did, I believe, was The Whale with Brendan Fraser. Again, like very grounded, more serious, straightforward movie, not really doing anything crazy with cameras or anything, very like stage play, and it's kind of production style. And now this is like another shift for that director. He's kind of doing something a little bit different that feels like it's kind of going in that crime drama, but with some comedy and lots of like quirky characters kind of direction. That actually kind of reminds me of some aspects of Pi, but Pi was a lot darker. Like this seems like it's a bit more like comedic in tone and stuff.
Yeah, it does.
But yeah, what did you think of this? Because you haven't seen anything Aronofsky, I believe.
I think this looks like a fun time.
Yeah. It's an interesting shift for his career. I'm curious to see what this is like, but we had to talk about it because it's Darren Aronofsky and he's too notable of a director not to talk about. But that is it for our On Beat section, and that leaves only full spoilers. This week on Full Spoilers, we are staying on the Jack Quaid train to talk about Novocaine. So, both of these movies came out this year in theaters. Companion came out earlier this year. Novocaine came out fairly recently. It's just recently hit streaming after being in theaters, I think just like 2 months ago, a month ago, something like that. So it's fairly close. He's got another 2 movies coming out. Actually, I think one of them's already out in limited release, and then he's got another one coming out later.
And he's been busy.
Yeah, he's been a busy boy. It's been a busy little
And he's
leader.
still, like, And he filmed the last season. I think they filmed they're in the middle of filming the last season of The Boys, too. So, like, he's busy.
Yeah, he's been doing a lot. He's been getting his licks in, you know? And you saw Companion, and we got to see him play, like, a real toxic character.
Yes.
And then
now we get to see him play
the Novocaine, and he's playing
the
a
protagonist. Yeah, he's playing, like, a genuine person.
A genuine sweetheart. Like, too good for this world, literally.
Yeah, literally. Like, in Companion, he says, I'm a nice guy. In Novocaine, he is a nice guy.
Yeah, exactly. There's no pretense about it. He probably wouldn't even say he's a nice guy in Novocaine because he's one of those that doesn't even necessarily consider himself a nice guy. He just is.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so I saw Novocaine when it came out in theaters. You hadn't seen it yet. You just saw it now. What did you think of Novocaine?
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun. Jack Quaid is
really
like,
fun action movie.
Yeah. Jack Quaid is like in top, like, you know, Jack Quaid charm in this as like this reluctant hero. I love, like, it's almost like the anti-John Wick, right? He spends the entire movie trying to avoid fucking people. He doesn't go into John Wick mode, right? He, like, reluctantly goes into this.
Well, he doesn't know how to do anything John Wick mode. He just happens to have a condition called congenital insensitivity to pain, or CIP, which is a real condition.
It's a real condition, yeah.
And he's actually kind of leading a pretty sorry life when we're introduced to him, because
he's an assistant manager at a bank.
Yeah, he can't feel pain, but that doesn't put him in a more advantageous situation. That puts him in a less advantageous situation because he could step on a nail, his shoe could fill up with blood, his foot could become gangrenous and need to be like amputated, and he wouldn't know.
He wouldn't know it happened. Yeah, exactly.
Which is ironically, that's what they say, you know, when you hear about like people with diabetes that have to get like a limb amputated and stuff. It isn't because the diabetes spreads to the limb and it has to be amputated. It's because the diabetes causes neuropathy, and then you can't feel certain sensations like pain and pressure and stuff. And then you could damage your foot and not realize it. So it's kind of like fits into that kind of category, you know, that this is something that people deal with, both diabetic neuropathy and what that can lead to, but also this condition that the character has in the movie is a real condition. And it's a terrifying condition because, I mean, one of the things he said that just like made me kind of almost anxious through the whole movie was when he talked about how he couldn't eat solid foods because he'd be afraid to bite his tongue off.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, oh my God, that thought like haunted me through the whole movie.
Right? Imagine
to the point where there's a shot at the end that like totally feels to me like it was set up to make you think he was going to bite his tongue off.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Did you think that when you were watching it? Were you like, oh shit, he's going to bite his tongue off? That's how they're going to end the movie.
Oh, geez, that would have been awful. I wasn't thinking that because that would have just, at the very end of the movie, that would have been weird and like very out of place.
But it felt like it. It felt like they telegraphed that happening, you know?
For like the kind of ending they were going for there, that would have been very weird to like suddenly do that. But yeah.
But it felt like they telegraphed it. We're too used to Chekhov's gun. We're thinking this is Chekhov's bite.
Yeah. It was not Chekhov's bite. Yeah, it was just the line at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah. And it's a tie back. I think they purposely did reference that and it gives you the anxiety of feeling it, but they do it for a different purpose, which is to say like he was living this insanely sheltered life out of fear of these things. And now he's like learned to actually just try to live his life. And that's kind of what the moment gives us.
Kind of learning to leave his comfort zone.
Yeah, exactly. The condition, his medical condition is like literally a metaphor for leaving your comfort zone, you know? And like something pushing you out of your nest.
Right.
So, yeah, I dug it. I thought it was really fun and like a really cute romance story and a really fun action movie with lots of eccentric characters that are fun and interesting to watch. We got Jack Nicholson's son in this.
Yeah, he plays the villain.
Yeah.
What is it, like Ray Nicholson?
Yeah.
He's the main villain in this. He's Simon. So
another actor with a booming career.
Yes. So we should probably go through just the basic plot stuff because it's not a complicated plot. Yeah. It's not. It's not a complex plot at all. It's basically, as you can guess, Jack Quaid's character Nate, which his name is Nathan
Kane.
Nathan Kane, thank you. It's Nathan, Novocaine. Haha. You know, his name is a pun. But he is an assistant manager at a bank. He gets into this relationship with a teller at the bank named Sherry, played by Amber Midthunder, you might remember from Prey.
Yeah, and also from Legion.
From Legion.
She's really into movies that have one-word titles.
Yes, she really is. And then the bank is robbed by these group of bank robbers led by Ray Nicholson, Simon, and they kidnap Sherry, and just as she was developing a relationship with Nate, they kidnap her, and that spurs Nate into action. You know, that drives this quest where he's trying to get her back.
He overhears on the police radio how long it's going to take for them to send a unit to go after her, and he starts talking about, in this much time, they just say that the hostage will be dead, you know? And so he's helping a police officer who's like on the ground who's shot. And he's like getting that look in his eye like, I should go after her. And the cop's like looking at him like, no, don't do it. And he just goes like, sorry. And he like steals the gun and steals the police car and starts chasing after him. And so begins the plot of the movie. It's him in pursuit of this girl that he had just started a relationship with.
Yes.
And so as it goes through, he ends up making use of his ability, his condition.
His disability.
Yeah.
You know, he uses his condition in, like, pretty creative ways to take out these guys, you know, like...
Yeah, some pretty creative kills in this.
Pretty creative kills, yeah. There's a scene in a kitchen where he's fighting this guy in a kitchen, and he has this gun that he picked up from the cop earlier. Mm-hmm. But in the course of this fight, the gun gets knocked into like this deep fryer, you know, in this kitchen. And at the end of the fight, he manages to get into a position where, like, he's right next to the deep fryer and he can see the gun, and he just sticks his hand in it and grabs the gun.
Yeah, we should say an active deep fryer, like a boiling deep fryer.
Yes, it's boiling. It's turned on, yes.
Yeah.
The oil is boiling. You know, that gun is deep frying.
Yeah.
You know, like he just shoves his hand into it, he deep fries his hand to grab the gun and kills the criminal with, you know, by shooting him in the head.
He Kentucky fries his hand and kills the first of the bank robbers, Ben.
He's the brother of Simon.
Yeah, and then he ends up trying to use information he has and his work as a bank manager and the contacts he has as a bank manager to kind of figure out who people are.
That's one of the examples. You know, another example is when he's fighting
Ben's brother Andre, are you thinking?
Yeah, Ben's brother Andre, right? He's in Ben's house, and Ben had his
Ben's paranoid, and he booby trapped the whole house.
And at some point, Nate gets like an arrow through his leg, and he can't remove it. You know, it's too difficult for him to remove, but he's not feeling any pain anyway, so he just decides to forget about it and keep investigating the house. Eventually, he gets into like this whole scuffle with Andre, who catches him, right? And it ends where Nate gets Andre's head between his legs, and then he just grabs his head with his legs and he pushes the arrow through his head, through his leg, through Andre's head, and then through like his other leg.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
He shish kebabs himself and Andre's head.
Yes.
Yeah.
So like,
great. There's also like, the tattoo fight, the tattoo parlor fight.
Where he just like pounds glass into his hand. So every like involves him using like the fact that he can't feel pain to like do these feats that kill these guys.
I love that interrogation when Andre's interrogating him and he's doing all these torture things and Nate's just pretending. He's just like, oh, that's the worst. Oh God, it hurts so much.
One thing that's interesting is this comes from directors Dan Burke and Robert Olson, who traditionally have done horror movies. You know, so they come from the world of horror, and you can kind of see that in the way in how gory and like violent this movie is. And the creative kills, you know, because the kills are like all like very creative. Like even though like this is like dressed up as like a John Wick type style action movie, it still like has that language of horror in it.
Yeah, definitely. The kills definitely are very horror coded. Simon's personality is very horror coded.
Yes.
There's like several things in there that are very horror coded that you can tell that where their background came from.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Exactly. One of the other movies they did previously was a movie I talked to you about, like I watched, called Villains, that had Bill Skarsgård and Kira Sedgwick and the guy from Burn Notice.
I can't think of his name. Michael Weston. Jeffrey Donovan, yeah.
Yeah, Jeffrey Donovan, yeah. Which was an interesting horror movie. But yeah, I just found that interesting when I learned, it's from like that directing pair.
Mm-hmm.
That was another interesting thing I thought about this movie.
Another interesting thing about this movie is that it has a supporting actor that we immediately recognize by voice alone. And that's Jacob Batalon, who plays Roscoe, Nate's 6'5" badass friend.
With a
biker
man
with
bun.
a Harley.
Biker with a Harley and a man bun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Turns out to be Ned from Spider-Man.
Turns out to be Ned from Spider-Man. Yeah, we see him in person for the first time when Nate is in Ben's house. He comes in just in time to, like, save him from Andre.
Yeah.
And he's great. Like, all his, like, stuff in the movie, when he shows up, from, like, the moment he shows up to, like, the end of the movie, like, all his stuff is fantastic.
Yeah.
He
got the assignment.
Yeah, he got the assignment for sure, yeah.
I think what really makes this movie work, though, is that the relationship between Jack Quaid's character Nate and Amber Midthunder's character Sherry is just genuinely sweet.
Yeah, I found this to be the weakest aspect of the film. I felt like the film turns on this, but it's also like the weakest, because it spends some time setting it up. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. But then there's like this twist that like you totally predict, like the first time you see her.
Yeah.
You totally predict it's gonna be a twist, but like it also like doesn't work for the movie because of the way it's handled. Where, spoilers, it turns out Sherry is Simon's sister. And her whole striking up a relationship with Nate was supposed to be part of a con to get him to give up valuable information about, like,
it was recon for the robbery.
For the robbery, yeah. It was set up for the robbery, you know, and then it turns out, oh, her feelings were real or whatever. But my problem with it, I was thinking about it, I was like, it's never like, it's a plot thread that's like never really resolved. It doesn't go anywhere because it's kind of like this whole thing.
As a plot thread, I would agree, but I think where I differ is that I think the chemistry worked between the actors.
Right.
Like their relationship, when you see them in the beginning of the movie before the bank robbery even happens and they go on the date and stuff like that, it's like a genuinely cute date, you know?
It is. Although my first thought was, okay, this woman's like being like weirdly interested in this quirky, goofy loner who hasn't.
Oh yeah, the plot around it is contrived.
Hasn't done anything to like warrant that amount of interest. Yeah,
the plot around it is a bit contrived, but the relationship actually works. Like I believe the relationship. I believe
when they go on the date, and stuff, and they get home and she tells him more about her backstory and stuff, and shows him her scars. You know, like. That was a good scene.
Yeah, I think a lot of what makes it work is that he's like hyper organized because he's trying to survive.
Right.
You know? And she's kind of messy.
Yeah, she's kind of like carefree, right?
Yeah, and so that's kind of what makes it like work and makes like it believable that he would be interested in her. More so than that she would be interested in him, but that he would be interested in her.
No, I totally like bought that he would be interested in her. I was just like,
yeah.
The other side is like, why would she be interested in him?
I think that's in there too. I just think it's a little bit more subtle. I think it's like the thing that got her interested in him was when like she saw his tattoos and kind of saw that side of his character. And that plays into it because he doesn't feel pain, so he tattoos himself. Like that's in the plot, you know? So he's got these like crazy campaign tattoos, and I think that aspect, when he was revealing that to her and talking about how he had like the open space on his chest and all that kind of thing, I think that kind of was the turning point of her liking him.
Right, yeah.
And then
she like started like to develop like an actual attraction versus trying to string him along.
Yeah. And then, you know, that paid off at the end with finishing off the tattoo.
Yes, finishing off the tattoo was good. I like it. The whole thing about her like being a plant and stuff, again, like it's interesting because they put that in there, but then like the movie like doesn't have time for that drama, right? They have that scene at the end where like, Simon basically spouts all that
exposition dumps. Yeah,
exposition dumps it at like Nate, and Nate is just okay. Like I'm trying to not get killed by you right now, and so he doesn't even like have a chance to process it, and then it's forgotten.
I'm kind of glad they did that though, because even though like exposition dumps and stuff are bad storytelling, this movie needed to have a quick pace. It needed to just go.
Oh yeah,
you know.
Yeah, the movie didn't have time for that. That's what I'm saying. Like as a plot element, the movie didn't have time for that, or didn't have time to even like properly resolve that. So it's kind of like, oh, okay, they put that in there, but it doesn't go anywhere because the movie is just moving too fast for it.
Yeah. And I'm fine with that. Like it doesn't bother me because it's fun. The movie knew its assignment, you know? It's fun.
Right. Yeah, it's a fun movie. It's a fun movie. I like I said, I liked it, but that's just like the one quibble, like complaint. If I was like in Nate's shoes, I'd be kind of like, what the fuck? You were using me like to rob the bank I work at? I don't know if I would personally be having like that cute date in the prison, like.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is a funny scene though, by the way.
I guess that goes with his experience though. That goes with his life experience, that he doesn't want to waste time. I think that goes into him because, like he said, the average life expectancy for people with his condition is like 25 years.
25 years old, yeah.
So to him, it's like, why am I going to waste time? Like, I'm just going to go on living, like now I've got this like interesting light that lit up my life, and it's like, I can move on from just about anything just because
and
it
by
doesn't
the way,
matter,
He's completely wrecked by the end of the movie too. Like, like at the end they show him like a full body cast and skin grafts. He said he's been like in a coma for like weeks.
Yeah, he didn't come out of this as a badass. Yeah, it's funny. They also had 2 police officers through this movie that I think were pretty good. I really dug Matt Walsh, who played Coltrane, the male police officer. I thought he was hilarious throughout the movie.
Yeah, he was hilarious. I was sad when he got killed.
Yeah, I was like, no. Then you had his partner, Mincy, who is kind of like the more, the one that's gonna relate to it and be like the good cop that, gets everything resolved and makes it so that, his girlfriend, of course, has to go to prison after being involved in the bank heist, but not for that long. And like the one that kind of, greases the wheel to make things like that happen in the plot. She's necessary for that, whereas like Coltrane's just like comedic relief.
Right.
I dug his character. I love his line about, this is a bad week to stop drinking. And she's like, you stop drinking? He's like, no, I just think it would be a bad week to stop drinking.
Right. Oh, yeah. I think it would be. Yeah, he had like so many like great like one-liners.
Yeah.
in the movie. Like he was hilarious.
It's a very fun character. Like one of the things I was thinking about after this movie finished is like, I really enjoyed my time in this movie. I really enjoyed the characters. Could a sequel work? And I was thinking like, I don't know. Like it would be nice to spend more time with the characters, maybe build out the relationship and stuff. But it's like, I just don't know how that would work again. Like you got what you needed from it. And this movie probably works better as one that goes along and puts when it's ahead,
Yeah, I did walk away from this thinking we needed a Novocaine too. Like, we needed, like, more of this.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, what would a sequel be, And I was thinking about that. And then I thought, what could have worked is if they just did another movie where you had the same detectives. And I'm like, that just a completely different movie, and not even them as the leads, but them also as like, side characters in another movie, unrelated,
Right.
But unfortunately, Coltrane passed away in the movie, so.
Yeah, so can't have that now.
Yeah, unless they do a prequel.
Yeah.
Novocaine -1. I don't know. But it was a fun movie. Glad you enjoyed it. And we're hopping off the Jack Quaid train for now.
For a while. There will no doubt be more Jack Quaid on this podcast.
There'll be another stop for us to board.
Yes.
But for now, we're stopping the Jack Quaid train. But we have one more thing to go over before we close out this episode, and that is our least favorite segment of the podcast, which is RIP. We have to acknowledge an actor, a iconic actor who passed away just recently, and that is George Wendt from Cheers.
Yeah. Cheers, yeah. Most famously, Norm from Cheers.
Yeah, just a very iconic actor. I think people who have never seen Cheers probably know who Norm is.
Oh yeah. And he's been in like so many things throughout the 80s and the 90s. Even if you haven't like necessarily seen a lot of Cheers, you've seen George Wendt.
Yeah, you'd see a picture of him, you'd know who he is.
Yeah, exactly. And so, he was in his 70s. Sad to see him pass. But rest in peace. He was a great comedian and actor.
Yeah, and just an iconic presence. So it's sad that we don't have him in the world anymore, but he contributed a lot while he was here.
Exactly. Yes, absolutely.
So next week, we are going to be covering season 2 of The Last of Us. Last time, I think for season 1, we covered it episode by episode. I think we were doing that concurrently with House of the Dragon, if I remember correctly. Or something else. Maybe it was something else. No, House of the Dragon we were doing concurrently with She-Hulk, I think. We were doing something else concurrently with The Last of Us, but we were talking about it week to week. But we're going to be talking about the full season in one episode this time. That's what our topic is for next week. So
it's 7 episodes. It's a little shorter than the first season. So.
Yeah. So if you want to watch if you want to listen to the podcast next week, make sure you're caught up on The Last Last of Us Season 2, because that's going to be our central topic.
Where are you on The Last of Us season? Are you caught up to the
I'm
latest
caught
episode?
up. I just got to see the last one, yeah. That's not out yet.
Oh, okay. So you're fully caught up. Okay.
Yeah. Just got the
Nice.
last episode left. That's the only thing, and that's not out yet.
Me too.
Hashtag me too?
No.
I don't think that's what it means.
No, don't do that.
But thank you everybody for listening. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. You can follow Will. He is at FoxaHero. You can check out our website, thetotalscreen.com. If you go to our website and open up a container store for any of our podcast episodes, scroll down to the bottom paragraph. You'll find all the links to our relevant accounts, our social accounts, our RSS feed for the podcast, SoundCloud page, everything. It's all there. So you can check that out there. You can also subscribe to our podcast through your favorite podcast client of choice, like Apple Podcast or Pocket Cast. And the entire backlog of our podcast is available on our YouTube channel, which you can also find by going to our website. Again, totalscreen.com. Open up a container store for any of our podcast episodes. Scroll down to that last paragraph and find all the links there. So thank you everybody for listening. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you for listening to the OnScreen podcast, the official podcast of The Total Screen. Visit our website at thetotalscreen.com. This podcast can be found on any major podcast client, including Pocket Cast and Apple Podcast. The entire backlog of this podcast and other content can be found on our YouTube channel.